So, just a couple days ago, we got a new development in the story of Kyle Rittenhouse. For those of you guys that don't know, last year, BLM protests were at their absolute peak following the death of George Floyd, as well as a few other notable instances of police brutality, overwhelmingly against the black community. And one of those protests was happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And the protest was, to be quite honest with you, mostly peaceful, but there was some violence happening. There were like I think there was like some shit was lit on fire. There was some violence occurring, mostly on the side of like counter protesters and whatnot. But for the most part, the protest was peaceful. But there was absolutely like bad actions being committed, like looting and whatnot. That's going to happen at any given protest, though most of the time they're going to be peaceful. Anyway, so a young man by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe he was 17 when this happened. It's been like a year since the story. How old was he when all this happened? What, he was like 17? He might have been younger. Was he younger than 17? I feel like he was definitely under 18. Yeah, he was 17. Okay, good. My memory has not failed me. Good to know. So Kyle Rittenhouse, he was 17 years old, decided that he was going to get a gun. And by the way, he was not allowed to have it. I believe it was his dad's gun. I think it was like a gun that belonged to one of his parents. It's been a while since this story. We're not really talking about the main event that happened, just the more recent news. He took this gun to this protest, along with like a bag with some medical supplies in it. At least I believe it was medical supplies. And he claimed he was going there to both offer medical support if it's needed and to help protect his community, as he said, against rioting and looting. And in this, a man ended up running at him with a plastic bag with something in it. It could have been anything. And begins running at Kyle Rittenhouse. And Kyle Rittenhouse runs for a minute from this guy, then turns and shoots him a few times. Now, in the middle of a protest such as this, once you start hearing gunshots, you're going to get pretty freaked out if you're a protester. So now all of a sudden people are screaming, someone's been shot, this guy just shot someone, and now you've got all the people in all the surrounding area who've now seen this guy with a gun who just shot a guy, and you know the stereotype about, let's be honest, Kyle Rittenhouse was in his hog uniform while he was there, okay? The kid didn't exactly look like a BLM protester. So naturally, people immediately assumed, okay, there's a shooting happening. This guy's out here shooting BLM protesters. And they ran up on him to try to fucking assault him because they thought he had just murdered somebody. Now, here's the dilemma. I would argue that, legally speaking, perhaps not morally, because we don't 100% know whether or not the guy that was chasing him was lethally armed or anything like that. But you also can't reasonably assume that he wasn't when you're in a situation like that and you're holding a gun. If you're holding a gun and someone's running at you, like if someone's beelining at you and you've got a gun in your hands, you're not exactly going to assume the person you're dealing with is all there. Well, now we know he was not. Well, the problem with that is you have to, when it comes to the law, you have to base it on what someone would reasonably assume in a situation, right? I won't say ask any lawyer because they aren't allowed to say this unless you're a client. But from my understanding, a lot of the way that things are done in court when it comes to whether or not someone is liable for a crime is whether or not someone could, in like a situation like this, whether or not someone could reasonably assume their life was in danger. And from what we've seen, it does seem like, at the very least for the first guy that he shot, there's a defense there. A strong defense even. Because yes, if you're holding a gun and someone's running at you, that there is an implication of, I'm gonna fucking kill you, because you're holding a fucking gun. Who's running at a guy who's holding a gun with violent intent and is all there? So I think it is within a reasonable possibility that he thought that his life was in danger there. Now, here's where things start to get a little messy. Now you have a bunch of innocent people who are now all reasonably under the belief that this kid over there is a far-right shooter who's like out here killing BLM protesters, with a dead guy on the ground, and this kid using a, what gun was he using? I want to say an AR-15, but I feel like that might just be because that gun is like the huge talking point by like all the media right now. What gun did he use exactly? Does anybody remember? It was a big fucking gun. An AR-15 most likely, actually. I want to say AR-15, but I feel like that might just be like other stories like this about AR-15s being used in shootings, like leaking into my brain. I don't know. It was an AR-15 style rifle. I hate that phrase, AR-15 style rifle. What does that mean? What kind of gun was it? What is an AR-15 style rifle? What does that mean? I don't know. I hate that. It was not a shotgun. It was a I mean, to use the phrase that I hate so much, it was a rifle gun. It was a rifle-looking gun. Like, it looked like the kind of gun you would be using if you were on the counter-terrorist side in CSGO or something. So he's out there, and now all of these protesters, this big crowd of mostly innocent people, I mean, some of them might have been looting or burning, we don't know, just like a people who now assume there is an active shooter, now all attempting to mob up on him because they believe he's an active shooter. But he's not, at least as far as we can tell from the videos that came out. Zan, how do I join website chat? Link is in the YouTube chat, actually. Nightbot posts it repetitively. It's xanderhall.com/live. That's the chat you see on screen, or on screen, and it's the better chat as well. Anyway, so now Kyle's being run up on by all these people. Now, I've watched the videos. I rewatched them last night to be 100% sure that I'm getting these really important details correct. Why didn't Kyle comply? If he followed the law, he wouldn't be in trouble. He was no angel. He certainly was not any angel. I'm completely under the idea that I would be willing to bet Kyle Rittenhouse was like a little shitter who was probably thinking to himself, I hope someone would. And that's why he had the gun there. He probably really wanted... well, I won't go that far. But he was armed, which meant he was there prepared to hurt somebody. So don't get me wrong. I don't think his intentions to be there were actually good. The problem is that having a gun, and when someone attacks you, we have no evidence he was taunting the person who attacked him and trying to goad him into attacking him. We don't have any evidence of that, unfortunately. As far as we are aware from the videos that have surfaced, a guy went and attacked this kid who had a gun, and the kid with the gun who is being attacked used lethal force to protect himself. Now, in many cases, that is legal, regardless of, obviously not if you obtain the gun in an illegal way. That's a big problem for Kyle legally. However, morally, I would argue, I mean, if someone's running at you and you got a gun, I don't know. I don't think it's as cut and dry, black and white as a lot of people make it out to be. But here's the part that gets really messy. So you've got all these people running up on Kyle, and you guys have stun-locked me so much by talking in chat. You got all these people running up on Kyle. These are innocent people who assume he is a active shooter. Now, why didn't Kyle just submit to the mob? Well, if you watch the video, they're not coming at him with their bare hands. Like, oh, we're just going to, like, pin him to the ground and disarm him, and we're going to be, like, street vigilantes that just handle the situation right. Someone was running at him with a skateboard, like, arched up and ready to hit him, like, when you're in a crowd and you think someone's a mass shooter, very reasonably, by the way, frankly, you don't care if you are going to end up killing this mass shooter in disarming him. You're concerned that he's about to let off another burst of shots into the crowd, and you're going to get a bullet in your gut or your head or something. So now he's in a situation where there's been a massive misunderstanding. These innocent people are coming at him with violent intent, assuming he's an active shooter, very clearly, like, violent intent, and he opened fire on some of them, and the crowd scattered, and he got away. Now, there was also a video that came out, which is pretty weird, where the police are arriving on the scene, and they pass by him, though I've heard the defense that the police were going to the place of the gunshots because they knew that there were gunshot victims, as I'm using the word now, on the scene that needed to be, like, top priority. Like, if there's people bleeding out on the ground and you're driving to that location, you might not notice in the middle of the night the kid walking by with a rifle, like, hung over his shoulder. And I think there was some other weird shit with the cops too, like being totally cool with what he did, even though it's at best morally or legally ambiguous whether or not he had just really seriously broken the law. But I've heard like response after response. It's a super fucking complicated situation. I don't want to take the hardest of stances on it, because I do worry that there's like extra details that I somehow missed back then or I don't remember that really changes the whole story. Now, I do want to mention there was a video that came out from a couple of weeks before that whole Kenosha situation where it looked like Kyle Rittenhouse was beating up a woman, like just getting into a fight with some girl in the street. That looked pretty fucked up, and that kind of gave me a pretty bad impression of this kid from the rip. But regardless, the legal precedent will guide the way of this trial, I suppose. But the reason why we're talking about this is because a new update has occurred. The judge of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial just said that the people that Kyle Rittenhouse shot should not be called victims in this case because it is a loaded word. I got a 4-minute segment from CNN about this right here. Now, of course, it is a CNN video on YouTube, so it is quite heavily ratioed with dislikes because conservatives can't handle reality and any news station that doesn't spew propaganda at them from the right. So yeah, let's go ahead and learn about this. Oh, no volume. There we go.
Kyle Rittenhouse is set to go on trial next week for murder. The teenager killed 2 people in Kenosha, Wisconsin during protests last year in the aftermath of the Jacob Blake police shooting. Now, what has a lot of people paying attention this morning is a pretty controversial decision by the judge in a pre-trial hearing, as there were some ground rules set that the prosecution is not happy with.
The word victim is a loaded word. And I think alleged victim is a cousin to it. Let the evidence show what the evidence shows, and if the evidence shows that any or more than one of these people were engaging in arson, rioting, or looting, then I'm not going to tell the defense they can't call them that.
So basically what he's just said here, for those of you guys who were a little thrown off by how slow he talked for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know, old people talk slow and it's hard to understand them. Basically, he claimed that the people who have been shot and killed, in this case, the people who have died, the dead people in the scenario, the judge saying that it is inappropriate and it is a loaded term to call them victims, but it is not loaded and completely fine, and he'll let Kyle Rittenhouse's defense call them rioters and looters and arsonists instead, because that's less loaded, apparently. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know enough about legal proceedings to be able to judge whether or not this is even allowed. What's occurring here is even allowed, like this amount of favoritism for the defense or even the prosecution on the other side of things. I'm not even sure if this kind of thing is allowed. It very well might be. I'm not going to go out on a limb and make a guess and say, oh, this can't be allowed. I don't know if it is. Though I will say, and I do know enough about people to say this, that seems to indicate a fairly clear bias in the situation. Now, here's the problem. Kyle Rittenhouse, with the gun in his hands, at that protest, what happened with the shooting, I think that was a legal shooting in terms of using lethal force to protect yourself. The problem is, in the thing that you would think, and this probably is what's occurring, but you would think that the prosecution is pushing would be the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse broke several laws just by getting to that point, right? If I remember correctly, he wasn't allowed to have the gun. He wasn't allowed to be carrying the gun in public where he was. I believe he'd also broken a law by carrying the gun across state lines. He'd only drove like maybe 45 minutes, I think, to get there, but he did cross state lines to do it, which I think might also be illegal. So the issue is, he wasn't even supposed to be there with that gun in the first place, but the things he did with that gun conceptually are legal, from my understanding. Now, I don't know what Wisconsin's stand your ground laws are. I'm inclined to believe they're quite generous. There are some states in which you have the castle doctrine, which I believe means that you're only allowed to use lethal force with a firearm to defend yourself if it's within your own property or your own house, if they're very strict. And then you also have stand your ground laws, like what Florida has. And that's sort of the law that I've always been used to my whole life. Like, this is just something that, as a Floridian, you were always knowledgeable that you could do. In Florida, at least, if you have a gun legally and you're out on the street, I don't know, at a mall or something, and someone tries to attack you with lethal force, you're allowed to shoot them right then and there. That's the stand your ground law. It means that your body is basically your castle, so to say, and the castle doctrine applies to your vicinity, your personal space, your well-being, and your safety. I don't know what Kenosha, Wisconsin's rules are on that. That'll be a big part of the case, I have no doubt. Though I do believe that this clip of the judge does belie some amount of bias in favor of the defense, Kyle Rittenhouse, in this situation.
Okay, Early Star co-anchor and attorney and legal reporter Laura Jarrett joins us now. Let me just make crystal clear what happened there in case people didn't get it. The judge just said that the people Kyle Rittenhouse killed, and there's no dispute over the fact that he killed them, they cannot be called victims, the people that he killed. They can, the judge says, however, be called rioters and looters.
And that's the part I think people are finding so disturbing. The prosecution is calling it a double standard. And in reality, they're dead. They cannot defend themselves at this trial.
From my understanding, regardless of the context of the case, isn't in every legal case anyone who has been killed or maimed in any situation that ends up going to court, is the person who was killed or maimed not referred to as the victim or a victim? Not because they were victimized by anybody in question necessarily, but because they were the victim of something that killed them, whether it be, like in this case, a gunshot. They are a gunshot victim. If somebody's robbing a store and the cops come and shoot the person robbing the store, and the person who is robbing the store is still alive, and they call in, an ambulance for them, which, by the way, of course, this robber is white, just to clarify, that's the only way the situation would occur. And they call the ambulance to get, like, medical help to him. Regardless of the fact that the cops shot the supposed robber in this situation, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that person robbing the store who was shot would be called a shooting victim by, like, paramedics. They'd say, like, before they had a name or anything, they'd say the shooting victim, blah, 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 right? I'm pretty sure that's generally how it's done.
Right? And typically, when there's an agreement that somebody has been harmed in some way, injured, or been killed, victim is an accepted term. There are defense lawyers who've been arguing for years that it is prejudicial, that it implies guilt, and that it taints the jury's mind. Courts are split on this. Jury instructions use the term victim all the time. Some people.
So it sounds like whether or not victim is appropriate in a situation like this is debated. It's not set in stone. Very interesting.
We'll define it in different ways. But at bottom here, what you're pointing out is that the judge took it a step further by saying that the people who died should be cast in the light for the crimes that they committed, when in fact people go to jail for killing people who commit crimes all the time. And so I think that's the part that's really got people's attention. And if you're the prosecutor on the case, you're going to say this is extremely prejudicial, but there's not much they can do about it. Because remember, if Kyle Rittenhouse gets off on this, if he's found not guilty, they cannot retry him.
Yeah, there's not an appeal for the prosecution. That's not how it works.
Exactly. And so it's interesting. I think, one of the things to remember is why is this even coming up, right? Rittenhouse is going to say self-defense. He's going to say, I was so afraid from all of these looters and arsonists, but Evidence 101 tells you that is not going to fly, and that's why this evidence shouldn't have been let in, because whether someone was setting fire to a building nearby should have no bearing on whether Kyle Rittenhouse was afraid for his life and thought that it was okay to shoot that person, right? That those two things don't go together. So
I mean, that's irrelevant, though. Why would the prosecution even focus? Why would the defense or prosecution even focus on the the people being rioters or looters. It doesn't even matter for the case and the legality of it. The fact that he shot people that were running at him should be what both sides are trying to focus on. For one, the prosecution should be focusing on the fact that he shouldn't have been there, and that I don't believe he was on legal grounds to have been there at all. And the defense should be mostly focused on the fact that he was being attacked when he shot, so that he can argue self-defense. I don't know why you would have to defame the character of the people who were shot to justify the self-defense, because from my understanding, what really matters is that, and we have video of this, it seems like it's quite reasonable, is that Kyle Rittenhouse was in a situation where he could reasonably assume his life was in danger, so he could use lethal force. On the legal side of the shooting, that is. Though, is it possible for him to even get off on being there with the gun? It wasn't his gun. He broke laws to be there. I don't know if he'll get off on that. I think even if he gets off on the shootings, which he very well might, I feel like there's no way he gets off on the laws he broke to be there.
I think this trial is...
I'm not sure him being allowed to be there is relevant to the murder charge, though. Like, it can be illegal, but also not tell if it's murder or not. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it murder. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't know if I'd call what Kyle Rittenhouse did murder. That's a really loaded term. I'm not sure. I don't know if I feel comfortable going with that one, but yeah, it's literally not legally technically murder. At worst, at best, you could argue it's manslaughter, I guess. But it is killing. We'll just settle with killing, I guess.
Is going to be extremely...
It was murder, bro? What do you think the definition of murder is? What do you think the definition of murder is? Do you think when you're fighting, like, if you're like a soldier fighting in a war and you're shooting at like other soldiers, is that murder? Because you're killing people? Murder has a definition. Murder isn't just when you kill someone. If you're like hunting a deer, for example, and you shoot it, that's also not murder. Partly because it's a deer, but also because you're hunting for like food or something. Like, I don't even think that would even qualify as murder. Murder is usually like... Murder is a specific type of killing. That's a good way to describe it, Lonnie. Yeah, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable jumping to that. That's something very easy to call out. Who is this guy and why is his stream recommended to me? I am the real Destiny's crack dealer. Stop stealing my name, okay? Actually, no, I don't deal him crack. I deal him meth-stiny.
Extremely fraught.
In a video game, that was a joke. That was very obviously a joke. I've never met Destiny in person. I don't do drugs. I don't sell drugs. And I've never given Destiny drugs, okay? And Destiny doesn't do drugs either, okay?
The judge has also decided that the defense can let in evidence that the police on the scene nearby told Rittenhouse and others, "We appreciate you guys." So you can tell this is...
So... Here's the problem, Jade the Unicorn. I seriously think that Rittenhouse wanted the outcome he got, which was to hurt people. But since there isn't proof of that, well, hold on. Yeah, okay, good. You're good then. Yeah, so that's the problem, though. You can't prove something like that very easily. Proving intent like that without solid evidence, like, I don't know, like a manifesto or a very significant probable cause that's, like, very verifiable... It's really hard to prove intent with that. Like, the idea that he was there hoping to provoke somebody into doing something that could justify him killing them.
This is going to just be fraught from top to bottom, and jury selection begins Monday.
They can't be called alleged victims.
No,
they're not
they have
even
to be called deceased, decedents, or complaining witness, as if you were just complaining about
But then
the
on
fact
the
that you're now
issue
dead.
of being a looter or a rioter, an arsonist, it's not even alleged looter or alleged
Well, and
arsonist.
it also is going to confuse the jury, right? If you're trying to demonize the people that die, it now means the prosecutors are going to be arguing about whether, in fact, they were, in fact...
How do you get an unbiased jury on a story like this? How do you do that? Because when you have a story like this that got so much attention, how do you get an unbiased jury? Because from my understanding, the jury is supposed to be as uninformed about the case prior to being called in for the jury as possible. Because the idea is you're supposed to get... Like, this is a lot easier with court cases that never really get all that much attention. Like, it's way... Like, if you get jury duty, chances are 99.9% of the time, it's going to be some, like, really mundane shit that you're getting called in for. I got jury duty once, and there ended up being a settlement, I think, and so it didn't even actually end up going through, but I still got paid like $18 for that day of jury duty or something. It might have been $83. I remember it had an 8 in it, so it was either like 18, 28, something like that. It was like not a lot of money. It was less than 100. But I went to jury duty, and it was over like a car accident, like a really minor one. It was like a 20-mile-an-hour T-bone that occurred that like nobody got hurt, nobody died, but they were just suing for damages, and they came to a settlement. But I had to sit in court, and I didn't sleep the night before. My degenerate ass stayed up all night, and then I had jury duty at 8 a.m., and I sat through at least 9 hours just sitting in this chair watching as like these lawyers explain the situation to us and show us the evidence. And then there was like 2 hours before that of sitting in a waiting room waiting for me to get called in for the case that I was going to have to do jury duty for. Hypers in chat if you've done jury duty. Actually, no. Hypers if you've never done jury duty. Because, like, I was so surprised when I got my note. I got it when I was 18. The year I became a old enough to be able to, like, be called in for jury duty. I got called in for jury duty. You're supposed to have, like, a grace period after getting called in for jury duty where it's, like, you've got to... I think it's, like, a 3-year, maybe more grace period where it's, like, you're probably not going to get called in for jury duty again. But I hope that system carries over to California, because imagine I get, like, this year I get called in for jury duty in California, and God forbid it's a real case. Like, God... What I considered when I got called in for jury duty was telling the lady at the thing that I was racist. Like, it was this lady they ask you, like, do you have any biases that may affect your judgment on this case? I thought about saying, yeah, I'm sexist, racist, ageist, ableist. I'm actually a neo-Nazi. I hate everybody. Frankly, I might just say guilty because I think it's funny. Yeah, you really just might not want to have me on as you know, on the jury. I thought about doing that, but then I remembered that I watched like a YouTube video once, and I believe saying all of that might actually be illegal because they're just gonna be like, okay, you're just trying to avoid jury duty. Like, I think that might not be allowed. So yeah, don't do that. I don't think you're actually allowed to do that. Because they might just be able to say, okay, so you're trying to, like, hold up the legal process. I'm pretty sure it's a thing that might actually happen. I don't know. Don't take my word for it. Anyway, jury duty was very boring. I slept through maybe half of the explanation of the fucking trial. I might have slept through about half of it, but, like, the second I realized it was about the most low-stakes situation I could possibly hope for, I was just like, so nobody got hurt, and there's, like, a dent. Like one door is dent in your car because you got T-boned. Yeah, I'm sleeping through half of the explanation of what happened here. And, like, the second I saw the video, I was like, yeah, no, clearly this motherfucker's the one who's at fault. Yeah, like, no, 100%. Dude, the guy literally ran through a stoplight and T-boned the guy. Why do we need to be here? We're looking at the traffic camera. It was at a major intersection. The guy who got T-boned was going straight, you know, through their green light, and a guy was speeding through a red light, T-boned the guy who was completely following the law, and then they wound up in, like, the median in the road, like the T-boned the car that T-boned the car that was acting within its legal right of the road. Like the momentum pushed them off into like a median. So they didn't even end up hurting anybody else or even blocking the road. And both cars could drive home after that. So I was just like, I'm sleeping through half of this. And if this even goes to court, like for real, and I have to sit there up on a jury, I'm just gonna, like, it's clear who's guilty here. You know, I don't know. Maybe I don't believe in our legal process enough.
You know, looters or rioters, all of that stuff is going to come in, and it's not going to focus on the actual person on trial.
But this is unusual, you say?
It's unusual. It's come up before, but judges, you know, they have a lot of discretion. Judges in state courts can do anything they want on these rules of evidence, and there's not much wiggle room here for the prosecutors.
Did they seriously? Were they really not able to get Kyle Rittenhouse for a federal crime? Really? it's all done on the state level. He's not going in for, like, he's not being prosecuted on a federal level. That's surprising. You would think that he did some federal crime, like something that the federal government could try to get him on. Yeah, fuck. Watch the video with the Confederate flag. A black salesman gets his first customer, then sees a Confederate flag by Amleto. That's a fucking skit. It's not a real story. It's a skit. Amleto is a skit channel. Amileto. Amileto? I don't even know how it's pronounced. It's a skit channel. It's not real. Why would we watch that right now? Anyway, regardless of what your opinion is on the morality or legality of what Kyle Rittenhouse did, I think that we can all agree, as long as we're all on the left here, that Kyle Rittenhouse is cringe, and that it was cringe of him to even be there. His reasons for it were pretty cringe, and he's just a pretty cringe guy. I've heard a lot of people levy accusations towards him that they sound good from a lefty perspective, but when you think about it for a while, it doesn't really line up, you know? It was actually Denham's that made this argument to me that made a lot of sense. So a lot of people were shitting on Kyle Rittenhouse because he had befriended the Proud Boys, and he was hanging out with the Proud Boys a lot after he reached his bail. And that sounds really bad, right? Like, bro, why are you hanging out with fucking Nazis? And then Denham said, well, I mean, who the fuck else is going to hang out with Kyle Rittenhouse? These people raised money to bail him out of prison, or bail him out of jail. I think he was in jail. To bail him out of jail. And now, and like the whole country, everyone in the country who isn't far right fucking hates him. So it's like, all right, maybe the hanging out with the Proud Boys at, you know, events and shit isn't quite as damning as people make it out to be. It's not great, but I mean, who the fuck else would he be hanging out with, really? Do you think anyone who isn't a Nazi wants to be seen dead with Kyle Rittenhouse as their friend? I don't know. A Mountain Dew on the desk. Nah, this is a Monster Energy. How did you confuse a Monster Energy can for Mountain Dew? They both have green on them, but it's like, this can's like 10% green. A Mountain Dew cans are like 99% green. Anyway, regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you've been knowledgeified by this video. And if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like. It helps the video out a lot. So does commenting. Ideally something nice. Comment something. Maybe say that my eyebrows are on fleek today. I don't really think they are, but I like to think that, that you guys think they are. Anyway, if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe and ring the bell icon. We're trying to hit 75k subs by the end of the year, so every extra subscriber helps. And of course, if you want to follow my social media, it's all linked down below, especially my fan Discord, where we do watch parties of movies, I play games with people, I even just kind of hang out and talk. It's a cool community, it's free to join, and you should definitely take the 2 minutes it takes, or not even 2 minutes, the 20 seconds it takes to join the fan Discord. It's a really nice place. You'll also get notified more consistently from Discord than you will by YouTube whenever I go live or upload a new video. You can, of course, also, if you've got the money for it and you don't need it for anything else and you don't know what to do with it, support me, as this is my full-time job, and without your financial support, I wouldn't be able to do this for a living. It helps support the show. You can donate, subscribe, or gift a sub to another person very generously over on my website, sanderhall.com/live. You can also support me financially on YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, and through Streamlabs directly by donating videos through MediaShare. However you support me, though, whether it be a comment, a like, a view, or even a financial donation, I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.